Hello, welcome to Greek Verse a Day. Today we're translating Revelation 3:1. Before we jump in, let's stop and recognize that there are some different surroundings here. I am now recording from my office at UDTS, whereas most of the videos you've seen of me in the past have been from my previous home office in Milwaukee, Wisconsin. My family just made the move from Milwaukee to Dubuque, and so we'll be doing recordings here from the office. So this is the sort of view you can expect to see moving forward. I had grandiose plans when I put the camera on and fired it up, turned it on for this great window that overlooks the University of Dubuque's campus to be in the background here. But when I turned it on, it turned out to be just a giant white blur, and it still is a large white blur behind me, even with the blinds closed. So I apologize for that. It makes things feel a little bit sterile in here. We're going to work with or try some different options for recording that will make it feel a little less that way in the future. But I wanted to make sure I got these videos into your hands on time, and so we work with what we have. As always, we'll start with a slow reading of the verse, then a faster reading, give you a chance to pause, do your own translation before I jump in with my translation and comments. So let's go ahead and read slowly together. Kai to angelo tes in sardesin ecclesias grapsan. Tade lege ha ekon ta hepta pneumata tu theu kai tus hepta asteras oida su ta erga hati anima ekes hati zeis kai nekros e. Once more, a little bit faster. Kai to angelo tes in sardesin ecclesias grapsan. Tade lege ha ekon ta hepta pneumata tu theu kai tus hepta asteras. Oida su ta erga hati anima ekes hati zeis kai nekros e. So at this point, go ahead and pause the video, look to your reader's edition of the Greek New Testament, and see what you can make of this verse before I jump back in. All right, so this structure should be familiar to you. We've seen it a couple of different times in Revelation. Revelation likes to follow certain patterns, even though there are sort of variations within the pattern itself. So in our first sentence here, if we just take this sort of sentence by sentence, our main verb is going to be this last word in the sentence. And so remember, I always advise you to look for the main verb in the sentence first. Going from left to right works, but when we're translating, we should be looking for our main verb. And we get it here. This is, you have a parsing note on this in the Reader's Edition. This is an aorist active imperative. Remember, imperative is the mood of command. Second person singular. So an individual, you, is the one being addressed or being commanded to do something, namely to write. You write, and remember, the structure of Revelation is that Jesus is addressing John, who is then putting down the message into a book. So Jesus is commanding John to write here. Write, and then all of this from to ecclesios goes together. It's going to be an indirect object. Write in the dative case, which we see from to angelo. Write to the angel tes in sardesin ecclesias. So remember, this tes and ecclesias, as we've seen in the past, these two go together. The definite article, the genitive feminine singular, and ecclesios over here is also genitive feminine singular. And stuck in between it is this little prepositional phrase in sardesin, in Sardis. So the church in Sardis, and this phenomenon where in Greek can just stick stuff into the middle of a definite article in the noun that it goes with is called hyperbaton. So literally we have the in Sardis church. In English, we change that to the church in Sardis. So this all together here is and write to the angel over the church in Sardis. And then this begins the content of what is written here. Our second word in the sentence is going to be our main indicative verb, a nice simple form, present active indicative, third person singular, he, she, or it says. So in this case it's Jesus, so we're going to have he says, and then the one doing the action is going to be this long string right here. This whole thing is our subject of the sentence. So this is going to be the one that is doing the saying, and it's going to be a sort of long title for Jesus. Ha ekon, the one having. With ekon here, we have a present active participle, nominative masculine singular. As always, we get our noun information, noun parsing information from the definite article that comes before it. So the one having, and then what comes next here is going to be the object of the participle. So remember, participles can take objects. So the one having, the seven spirits of God is one of the objects, and the other object is tous hepta asteros, the seven stars. So in both of these cases, we have the number 7, hepta, and hepta, with different nouns and different forms of the noun. So here we have a neuter accusative plural with ta pneumata, and here we have a masculine accusative plural with tous asteros. And notice how hepta is the same, even though we have different nouns in different cases, and in different genders. So here with the masculine gender, and over here with the neuter gender, the hepta doesn't change. That's because this is what is called an indeclinable number, that this number does not change its form based on the word it goes with. So you're always going to see 7 as hepta here. So the 7 spirits of God, so tu theou, just a simple genitive following it there, and the 7 stars, and then our object, so if this is our subject, the one having the 7 spirits of God and the 7 stars, says, what he says is these things, tade. So we've talked about this word several times. It's an accusative accusative neuter plural. Looks a lot like the definite article ta with de stuck after it, because that's exactly what it is. So the one having the 7 spirits of God and the 7 stars says these things. And then the content of what is said is going to be what follows here in Revelation. So what Jesus says begins right here. Oida, I know. And what Jesus knows is ta erga su. Notice we have a genitive personal pronoun. It's second person singular here. So your works. Oftentimes we expect the genitive of possession to follow the noun, but that's not always the case. Remember, Greek is a highly inflected language, and word order is flexible in Greek. So this su is your works, even though we often expect this genitive to follow the noun. So I know your works, and this is where things get a little tricky right here with this hata onoma. Even for me, reading through this the first time, I stumbled over it a little bit and thought, what in the world is John doing here? So literally, it's that a name you have, that you are alive. So to sort of break this down, remember hati is that or because, so we have that on a couple occasions. And then we have one verb here, ekes, present active indicative, second person singular, meaning you have. So you have, then the object of what the church has is a name. So I know your works, that you have a name. And then literally what follows here is that you are living. So this one right here, you don't get a parsing note for, and you might have had a little trouble with this verb. It's going to be a present active indicative, second person singular, from zao, which means I live. And so the confusion here probably comes from the fact that we have contraction occurring, and this looks a whole lot like the noun for life. But in this case, it's actually contraction going on with zao. So we have is za as our root, and then when the ace ending of the second person singular is added on, this alpha and this epsilon combine to make an eta. And then when that eta appears, that allows the iota to go underneath it. So we end up with Zace, like this. So not only is that contraction maybe a little bit confusing, but the syntax here is a little bit confusing too, because John is saying that you have a name, that you are living. So in a way, it seems that John is trying to say that the name is sort of the verb of living, that you have a name, that you are living, or that you are alive. So this seems to sort of be the content of the name. I think that's sort of what John's going for here. It's a little bit odd grammar. It sort of, we've talked about in the past how the author of Revelation doesn't follow sort of prescriptive rules of grammar, which isn't necessarily a bad thing, but it can lead to things like this where we get confused precisely because John is not laying things out so clearly. It might have been a lot more clear for someone who was a native Greek speaker. And then finally, this last part here is going to be, and you are dead. So you have a name that's alive, even though you are dead, is sort of the implication here. So to put this all back together at the end of this longer translation video, we have and to the angel over the church in Sardis, write, the one having the 7 spirits of God and the 7 stars says these things. I know your works, that you have a name, that you are alive, and you are dead.